The Galactic Coalition medical outpost on Vega 9 was a sanctuary of hope, standing amidst the chaos of war. Nestled on the edge of a barren, windswept asteroid, its towering metal spires glinted under the cold light of distant stars. Inside, the corridors were a constant buzz of activity, doctors and medics rushing between wards, the hum of medical drones zipping past, and the endless stream of triage calls echoing from the comm system. Cale had grown used to the chaos. A human medic in a facility dominated by alien species, he was something of an anomaly. But Cale thrived in the outpost's pressure cooker environment. With steady hands and a calm demeanour, he had earned the respect of his peers, alien and human alike. It was late in the cycle when the double doors to the main ward burst open. A gust of cold air from the asteroid surface swept in, followed by a commotion that silenced the bustling medbay. Cale turned from his station, his brow furrowing at the sight before him. 2 Coalition guards dragged in a towering alien woman between them. Her violet skin shimmered faintly under the harsh medical lights, and her long silver hair was matted with what appeared to be blood, black, viscous, and faintly luminescent. Her armour, a sleek but battle-worn exosuit, was scorched and dented. Behind her trailed a junior officer, his face pale as he barked orders. "Clear the way. Priority emergency. Clear the table." The medbay staff rose. Cale could feel the tension rise as the room fell silent, save for the clatter of the gurney as the guards heaved the alien woman onto it. "That's Zara," whispered a nurse to Cale's left, her voice quivering with a mix of fear and awe. Cale frowned. "And she's one of his?" The nurse nodded, emphasizing the word. "Zero's enforcer, a mercenary, a killer." Cale's gaze shifted back to the alien woman. Even unconscious, her presence was imposing. Her muscular frame seemed coiled with latent energy, and her expression, though slack, held traces of defiance. "Everyone, back to your stations," Cale ordered, his tone sharper than usual. "But Cale—" "I said back to your stations," he repeated, his voice cutting through the murmur. Reluctantly, the staff returned to their posts, though their eyes lingered on the gurney. Cale grabbed a scanner and approached Zara. The guards flanked him, their weapons still trained on the unconscious mercenary. "You can lower your guns," Cale said, irritated. "She's not going anywhere in this condition." One of the guards, a burly reptilian, growled, "You don't know what she's capable of, human." "She's dangerous." Cale didn't look up. "She's also bleeding out. Now move, or she'll be dead before we figure out how dangerous she is." The guards hesitated but eventually stepped back. Cale set to work, scanning Zara's injuries. The results were grim. Shrapnel lodged in her abdomen, multiple fractured bones, and severe burns across her torso. Her breathing was shallow, but her vitals were surprisingly strong for someone in her condition. As Cale began prepping for surgery, the nurse who had spoken earlier approached him again, her voice low. "Cale, you don't have to do this. Let her die. No one would blame you." Cale's hand stilled for a moment. He looked at the nurse, his eyes calm but firm. "That's not how we do things here. Not on my watch." The nurse opened her mouth to argue but thought better of it. She retreated, leaving Cale alone with his patient. The procedure was delicate. Zara's alien physiology was unlike anything Cale had worked on before. Her blood coagulated rapidly, almost forming crystalline structures around the wounds, complicating the removal of the shrapnel. Her bones, dense and lined with a metallic alloy, made setting fractures a challenge. "Fascinating," Cale murmured as he worked, his focus unbroken. Several hours later, Cale finally stepped back, exhausted but satisfied. Zara's wounds were treated, her breathing steady. She would live, if her body didn't reject the human-made medicines he'd used. As he cleaned up, Cale felt a faint twinge of unease. He had defied the unspoken rules of the outpost by treating her. Zara was no ordinary patient. Her reputation as Zark's mercenary made her a symbol of fear and hatred for many. Cale didn't care. To him, She was a patient, nothing more. Awakening the next morning, Carl found Zara awake. She sat on the edge of the medical bed, her amber eyes glowing faintly as she inspected the bandages on her arms. When she noticed him, her gaze sharpened like a predator sizing up its prey. "You," she said, her voice a low growl. Cale approached cautiously. "How are you feeling?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she flexed her fingers, testing her mobility. "You're the one who treated me," she finally said, her tone neutral but laced with suspicion. "That's right," Cale replied, pulling up a stool to sit across from her. "You were in bad shape when they brought you in. How do you feel now?" "Alive," she said curtly. "You're welcome," Cale said, his tone dry. Zara's lips twitched, almost forming a smirk. "I didn't thank you." Cale shrugged. "Didn't expect you to." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Cale studied her, noting the way she carried herself. Despite her injuries, she exuded an air of confidence. Yet there was vulnerability, a fleeting moment where her warrior's mask slipped. "Why?" she asked suddenly, breaking the silence. "Why what?" "Why help me? You must know who I am." Cale leaned back, crossing his arms. "I don't care who you are. My job is to help anyone who needs it. That's all." Zara's eyes narrowed. A noble sentiment, rare in this galaxy. Cale chuckled softly. "You don't meet many medics, do you?" She didn't answer, but the corners of her mouth twitched again, hinting at amusement. The staff's unease and the rest of the outpost weren't as accepting of Zara's presence. Whispers and sidelong glances followed Cale wherever he went. Some of his colleagues outright avoided him, their disapproval evident. "She's a killer," one doctor muttered to another as Cale passed by. "Cale's putting all of us at risk." Cale ignored them, focusing on his work, but the isolation weighed on him. He hadn't realized how quickly his decision to treat Zara would turn him into an outcast. Zara noticed. One evening, as Cale checked her vitals, she said, "Your people don't like me." "They don't know you," Cale replied without looking up. "They don't need to," she countered. "They know what I've done. That's enough." Cale glanced at her, surprised by the hint of bitterness in her tone. "Do you regret it?" Zara's expression darkened. "Regret is for the weak. I did what I had to do to survive, to protect my people." "And now?" She didn't answer. The warning came late one night as Cale read medical reports in his office. An alert blared through the comm system, a junior officer's voice crackling through the speakers, panic evident. "Emergency alert! Coalition forces are en route to apprehend the fugitive Zara. All staff are ordered to stand down and comply." Cale's heart sank. He knew this moment would come, but not so soon. He rushed to the medbay, where Zara was already standing, her posture tense. Her armor, though damaged, was back on, and her weapons were in hand. "They're coming for me," she said. Cale nodded. "They'll want you dead or in chains. But I won't let them hurt you here." Zara's eyes softened briefly before hardening again. "You don't have to get involved, Kyle. This isn't your fight." The standoff in the medbay was suffocating. Coalition guards stood in rigid formation, their weapons locked on Kyle and Zara. The flickering overhead lights reflected off their polished armor, creating an eerie atmosphere that heightened the tension. Kyle's heart pounded, but he kept his expression calm. He'd faced tense moments before, patients on the verge of death, life or death decisions in the operating room. But this was different. Lives would be lost, no matter his choice. "Last warning, medic," the coalition officer barked. "Step aside, or you'll face the consequences." Cale raised his hands, palms outward, as if trying to soothe a spooked animal. "Listen," he said, his voice steady. "This is a medical facility. Neutral ground. She's not a threat right now. Look at her. She's injured, barely standing. Let me continue her treatment, and when she's stable, We can talk about what happens next." Zara shot him a sharp look. "I don't need you to negotiate for me, human." "Quiet," Cale muttered out of the corner of his mouth. The officer sneered. "You think we're fools. She's Zark's enforcer, one of the deadliest warriors in the galaxy. We're not leaving without her." "You're making a mistake," Cale replied. "You storm in here, weapons blazing, and someone's going to die. Is that what you want?" The guards shifted uneasily, exchanging glances. Cale pressed on. "Do you really think Zark will take kindly to you killing one of his people? Even if you take her alive, this will escalate into something none of us can control." The officer hesitated. It was just a flicker of doubt, but Carl seized on it. "Let me keep her here," Carl continued. "She's not going anywhere in this condition. You'll have your chance to interrogate her, but right now she's my patient, and as long as she's under my care, no one touches her." The officer's jaw tightened, but he finally lowered his weapon. "Fine," he snapped, "but we're not leaving. We'll post guards outside the medbay. The moment she's ready to move, she's coming with us." Cale nodded, relieved. "Fair enough." The guards backed out of the room, though their gazes lingered on Zanara. The door shut behind them, leaving Kale and Zanara alone in tense silence. Zanara slumped onto the edge of the bed, her body betraying the exhaustion she'd been hiding. "You're either the bravest human I've ever met," she said, her voice low, "or the stupidest." "Probably both," Cale admitted, a fractured past. As the hours ticked by, Cale kept a wary eye on the medbay doors, half expecting the guards to burst back in at any moment. But they stayed outside, just as they promised. Zanara, meanwhile, remained a reluctant guest. Her injuries, though severe, were healing faster than Cale anticipated, a testament to her alien physiology. But her mood was as prickly as ever. "You didn't have to stand up for me," she said one evening, as Kale checked the regeneration progress on her burns. "Someone had to," he replied without looking up. "You don't even know me," she pressed. Cale paused, meeting her gaze. "I don't need to know you to save your life. That's my job." Zanara studied him, her amber eyes searching his face for something. "You're a strange one, human." Cale chuckled. "I get that a lot." A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the hum of medical equipment. Then, unexpectedly, Zanara spoke again. "I wasn't always like this," she said quietly. Cale glanced at her, surprised by the vulnerability in her tone. "I wasn't always a mercenary," she continued, her gaze distant. "Once I was a soldier, a protector of my people." "What happened?" Cale asked gently. Her expression hardened. "Zarek happened. My people were weak, scattered. He united us, gave us strength, but strength comes at a cost." Cale didn't press further. He could see the pain in her eyes, the weight of choices she couldn't undo. Instead, he simply said, "For what it's worth, I don't think you're as bad as they say." Zanara's lips quirked in a faint smile. "Careful, human. You might start liking me." The attack. The uneasy truce between the medbay and the coalition guards didn't last long. 2 days after the standoff, Cale was jolted awake by the blaring of alarms. He bolted to the medbay, where Zanara was already on her feet, her armor gleaming under the emergency lights. "What's going on?" he demanded. "Trouble," she said grimly, strapping on weapons. The doors to the medbay burst open, but it wasn't the coalition guards. A group of heavily armed mercenaries stormed in, their armor bearing the unmistakable insignia of Zark's forces. Cale's heart sank. "You've got to be kidding me." The mercenaries spread out, their leader, a hulking figure with 4 arms, stepping forward. "Zanara," he rumbled, "the king demands your return." Zanara's posture stiffened. "And if I refuse?" The leader sneered. "Then you die here, along with anyone foolish enough to stand with you." Cale glanced at Zanara. Do they always show this much gratitude? "Shut up and get behind me," she snapped. The mercenaries raised their weapons, and all hell broke loose. Zanara moved like a whirlwind, her injuries forgotten as she fought with a ferocity that left Kyle in awe. She ducked, dodged, and countered attacks with precision, her blades flashing as they struck true. Kyle, for his part, did his best to stay out of the way, but when one of the mercenaries turned on him, he didn't hesitate. Grabbing a surgical laser from a nearby tray, he aimed for the alien's weapon and fired. The shot wasn't lethal, but it was enough to disarm the mercenary. Kyle followed up with a well-placed kick, sending the alien sprawling. "Not bad for a medic," Zanara called over her shoulder, a hint of amusement in her voice. "Don't get used to it," Kyle shot back, ducking behind a table as another mercenary fired at him. The battle was intense, but Zanara was relentless. One by one, the mercenaries fell until only their leader remained. Breathing heavily, Zanara levelled her blade at his throat. "Tell Zarek I'm done taking orders," she growled. The leader hesitated, then nodded slowly. "As you wish." He turned and retreated, his remaining men following close behind. "Own, if you're leaving, I'm coming with you." Zanara stared at him, her amber eyes narrowing. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Cale replied, crossing his arms. "You're my patient, and until you're fully healed, you're stuck with me." She let out a frustrated sigh, but didn't argue. Instead, she muttered, "You're going to get yourself killed, human." Cale smirked. "Wouldn't be the first time I did something reckless. What's the plan?" A turning point. When the dust settled, Cale slumped against the wall, his chest heaving. "That wasn't in my job description," he panted. Zanara chuckled, a sound that was surprisingly warm. "You handled yourself well for a medic." Kyle gave her a tired smile. "Thanks, I think." She sheathed her blades and turned to him, her expression softening. "You didn't have to fight with me." "I told you," Kyle said, meeting her gaze. "Someone had to." For the first time since they met, Zanara looked genuinely moved. "You're a rare one, Kyle." He raised an eyebrow. "You actually remember my name?" "I'm honoured." She rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her smile. As the emergency lights dimmed and the medbay returned to an uneasy calm, Cale couldn't shake the feeling that their lives had just been irrevocably changed. The aftermath. The attack left the medbay in shambles. Scorched walls, overturned equipment, and bloodied floors bore testimony to the ferocity of the battle. Cale set to work immediately, patching himself up where necessary, and tending to what little damage Zanara hadn't shrugged off with her alien resilience. Zanara stood by the window, staring out at the barren moon's surface. Her gaze was distant, lost in thought. It wasn't often she let her guard down, but something in the way her shoulders sagged betrayed her inner turmoil. "You're awfully quiet," Cale remarked as he finished suturing a gash on his forearm. "Thinking," she replied without turning around. "That's dangerous." Zanara finally glanced back at him, her lips twitching into a wry smile. "You're getting cheeky, human." Kale chuckled softly, but didn't push further. Instead, he crossed the room and began cleaning up the remains of their hastily overturned medical supplies. As he worked, he couldn't help but notice the unspoken tension hanging between them. Finally, Zanara broke the silence. "You're wondering why they came for me." "The thought did cross my mind," Cale admitted. "That wasn't exactly a friendly house call." Zanara hesitated, her fingers tracing the hilt of her blade. "Zarek doesn't tolerate disobedience. I was his weapon, his enforcer, when I refused to carry out an order." She trailed off, her jaw tightening. Cale leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "What kind of order?" She looked away. "The kind that would have left an entire colony in ruins. Men, women, children, innocents, all to make an example out of them." Cale's stomach twisted. "And you refused?" Zanara nodded. "I thought I could get away, start over, but Xeric doesn't let his tools go so easily." "Tools?" Cale repeated, his voice tinged with anger. "You're not a tool, Zanara. You're a person." She laughed bitterly. "Not in Xeric's eyes. To him, I'm a weapon, and weapons don't get to choose their purpose." Cale stepped closer, his tone firm. "Maybe it's time you stopped letting him define you." Her amber eyes locked onto his, searching for something. Hope, conviction, perhaps even absolution. "Easier said than done, human. You've never had to live under someone like Xeric." "You're right," Cale admitted. "I don't know what that's like, but I do know that you're more than what he made you. You proved that when you refused his order." Zanara held his gaze for a long moment before looking away. "You're annoyingly optimistic. You know that?" Cale grinned. "It's a flaw, learning to live with it." A desperate plan. The uneasy truce with the Coalition guards outside the medbay continued, but Cale knew it wouldn't last. Between Zanara's presence and the mercenary attack, tensions were reaching a boiling point. Late that night, as Cale reviewed the facility's security logs, Zanara approached him. Her movements were quiet, but Cale had grown accustomed to her presence enough to sense her arrival. "We need to leave," she said bluntly. Cale arched an eyebrow. "Leave? As in abandon the medbay?" "Yes." "And go where exactly?" "The Coalition still has a warrant out for you, and Xeric's goons clearly know where we are." Zanara leaned over the console, her expression serious. "There's a station in the belt, neutral territory. It's a haven for people like me, those who cross powerful leaders and need a place to disappear. If we can make it there, I'll be safe." Cale frowned. "And what happens to me? The Coalition isn't going to take kindly to me harbouring a fugitive." Zanara hesitated, then straightened. "I'll go alone. You've already done more for me than anyone else ever has. I won't drag you into this any further." Cale shook his head. "Not happening." "Cale." "No," he interrupted firmly. "You're still recovering, and you can't fight off Xeric's people and the Coalition on your own. If you're leaving, I'm coming with you. If we're doing this, we're doing it together." Zanara stared at him, something unspoken passing between them. Finally, she nodded. "All right, but you'd better be ready. Once we leave, there's no turning back." The escape. The plan was risky, bordering on suicidal. The medbay was located on a remote mining moon with only one functional transport shuttle available. They'd have to bypass the Coalition guards, make it to the shuttle, and navigate through the asteroid field surrounding the moon, all while avoiding Xeric's forces. Cale worked quickly, modifying the shuttle's identification codes to mask their departure. Meanwhile, Zanara prepared for the inevitable confrontation. She sharpened her blades, checked her equipment, and even taught Cale a few basic self-defense techniques. "Try not to die," she quipped as she demonstrated how to disarm an opponent. "I'll do my best," Cale replied dryly. When the time came, they moved swiftly. Cale used the medbay's internal systems to create a diversion, triggering a series of alarms that sent the Coalition guards scrambling. Under the cover of chaos, he and Zanara slipped out through a maintenance hatch and made their way to the shuttle bay. The journey wasn't without its challenges. At one point, they encountered a pair of guards who spotted them and raised their weapons. Zanara dispatched them with ruthless efficiency, her movements precise and deadly. Cale tried not to dwell on the violence. He knew it was necessary, but it still left a sour taste in his mouth. Finally, they reached the shuttle. Zanara took the pilot's seat, her hands flying over the controls with practiced ease. Cale strapped himself into the co-pilot's chair, his heart racing. "Ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be," he replied. The shuttle roared to life, and they shot out of the hangar like a comet. Almost immediately, the Coalition guards opened fire, their shots streaking past the shuttle as Zanara manoeuvred into the asteroid field. "Hang on!" she shouted, banking sharply to avoid a massive asteroid. Cale gripped the armrests, his knuckles white. "I hate this part." Zanara smirked, her adrenaline-fueled confidence shining through. "You'll get used to it." Despite the chaos, Zanara's skill as a pilot was undeniable. She weaved through the asteroid field with precision, evading both the Coalition and a squadron of Zerik's mercenaries who had joined the chase. Cale focused on managing the shuttle systems, rerouting power to the shields and deploying countermeasures when necessary. Together, they made a formidable team. After what felt like an eternity, the asteroid field began to thin, and the pursuing ships fell back. Zanara let out a breath of relief, her hands finally relaxing on the controls. "We did it," she said, a note of disbelief in her voice. Cale slumped back in his seat, exhausted but triumphant. "Yeah, we did." As the stars stretched out before them, Cale couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. Their journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of hope. The neutral station. The neutral station in the belt was unlike anything Cale had ever seen. Suspended within a massive asteroid, it was a patchwork of salvaged ships and alien architecture. Lights blinked erratically, and the hum of activity echoed through the corridors. It was a sanctuary for outcasts, rebels, and those with nowhere else to go. Cale followed Zanara through the crowded promenade, feeling out of place among the assortment of alien species. Vendors shouted in languages he couldn't understand, hawking everything from exotic weapons to questionable food. Zanara, however, moved with confidence, her hand resting on the hilt of her blade. "Are you sure this place is safe?" Cale asked, his voice low. "It's as safe as it gets," Zanara replied. "The station's ruler, Orith, enforces strict neutrality. Zerik's people won't dare make a move here." "That's comforting," Cale muttered, though he wasn't entirely convinced. A place to start over. Zanara led Kyle to a quiet corner of the station where a grizzled alien with 6 eyes and a mechanical arm greeted them. "Zanara," the alien rumbled, "I didn't expect to see you again." "Orith," Zanara said, inclining her head. "I need sanctuary and a ship." Orith's gaze shifted to Kyle, his expression unreadable. "And who's this?" "A human medic," Zanara replied. "He saved my life. He's with me." Orith nodded slowly. "Very well. You'll find refuge here, but a ship, that'll cost you." Zanara produced a small data chip and handed it to Orith. "This should cover it. Payment for a job I never got to finish." Orith inspected the chip, then grinned. "Always prepared, aren't you?" Zanara smirked. "You know me." With the arrangements made, Orith directed them to a temporary living space. The room was small but functional, with 2 bunks and a viewport that offered a stunning view of the asteroid field outside. Cale dropped onto one of the bunks, exhausted. "So what now?" Zanara sat across from him, her posture relaxed for the first time in days. "Now we plan our next move. This isn't over, Cale. Zerik won't stop hunting me. But for now, we have a chance to breathe." Cale nodded, though the weight of their situation was still heavy on his mind. "Do you think you'll ever be free of him?" Zanara's gaze softened. "Maybe not completely. But with you here, I feel like I have a fighting chance." A reckoning. Their respite didn't last long. 2 days after their arrival, word spread through the station that Zerik had sent emissaries to negotiate with Orith. Zanara's jaw tightened when she heard the news. "He's trying to force me out," she said grimly. Cale frowned. "Can he do that? I thought this place was neutral territory." "It is," Zanara replied, "but Zerik doesn't play by the rules. If he offers Orith enough, he might decide I'm not worth the trouble." Cale shook his head. "We can't let that happen. There has to be another way." Zanara hesitated, then turned to him. There is, but it's dangerous. I'm listening. She explained her plan: confront Xeric's emissaries directly and challenge their authority. It was a bold move, one that could either solidify her freedom or lead to her death. Cal didn't like it, but he knew she was right. They couldn't keep running forever. The confrontation. The station's central chamber was packed with onlookers when Zanara and Kyle arrived. Xeric's emissaries, a trio of imposing figures clad in black armour, stood at the centre, their presence commanding the room. Zanara strode forward, her head held high. "I'm here," she announced, her voice ringing out. The leader of the emissaries turned, his expression cold. "Zanara, you've caused quite a bit of trouble." "Comes with the territory," she replied. "Let's skip the formalities. I know why you're here." The emissary's gaze flicked to Orith, who observed silently from his perch above the crowd. "We have an offer," the emissary said. "Come back willingly, and Xeric will show mercy. Resist, and this station will suffer the consequences." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Zanara didn't flinch. "You think you can intimidate me? Orith won't hand me over, not without a fight." Orith raised a hand, silencing the room. "I won't let this station become a battleground," he said. "If you have a way to settle this without bloodshed, I'll allow it." Zanara stepped forward. "I challenge your authority. By the laws of Xeric's own code, I demand a trial by combat." The emissaries exchanged glances, their leader scowling. "You think you can win?" Zanara smirked. "You're welcome to try me." The final battle. The combat was brutal and unrelenting. Zanara faced the leader of the emissaries in the station arena, the crowd roaring as they clashed. Kale watched from the sidelines, his heart in his throat. Zanara fought with a skill and determination he'd never seen before, her blades moving like extensions of her own body. The emissary was strong, but Zanara's resolve was stronger. With a final devastating blow, she disarmed her opponent and held her blade to his throat. "Yield," she commanded. The emissary hesitated, then dropped his weapon. "You've made your point," he said grudgingly. Zanara stepped back, breathing heavily. "Tell Xeric that I'm done running. If he wants me, he'll have to face me himself." The emissaries retreated, their defeat a clear message to Xeric. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Kyle rushed to Zanara's side. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with awe. Zanara smiled, her exhaustion evident. "We did it. A new beginning." In the days that followed, Zanara's victory became the talk of the station. She was no longer a fugitive. She was a symbol of defiance against tyranny. Kale stayed by her side, helping her recover and plan her next steps. Though their future was uncertain, one thing was clear: they were stronger together. "You could have left," Zanara said one evening as they sat by the viewport watching the stars. Kale shrugged. "I had a feeling you'd need me." She smiled, her gaze softening. "I do?" For the first time in years, Zanara felt a sense of hope. With Kale by her side, she knew she could face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would forge a new path, one of freedom, redemption, and perhaps something more. The stars stretched out before them, endless and full of possibilities. The end.